Welcome to the FanDuel wide receiver analysis for the NFL wildcard round. I'm Jason Gilbert, JGilbo11. With me is Justin Elick at Big Italy 42. You took a look at wide receivers this week, and we got basically three of the best in the game going this weekend, and kind of easy pay up options if you're going that route. You rank here, is this basically Jordy Nelson, Brown? Is that kind of how you're going, 1, 2?
I think Nelson, is a safer option because there's certainly a potential that the Steelers get up, 21-0 early in this one and just cruise and just ride a Le'Veon Bell. And then, there's a doomsday scenario for Brown owners that it gets really bad and we see D'Angelo Williams late. And I'm not predicting that, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that. So I think that the Packers-Giants game is going to stay competitive close till the end. So I think Nelson will be needed in the fourth quarter. I honestly don't think Brown will be needed in the fourth quarter, but with that being said, even if they're up by 3 touchdowns by that point, then you got to imagine he probably grabbed one of them. And, especially because this is a team that's been hot. They've been, 7 in a row. This is a team that crushed them earlier in the year. They're on fire right now, as much as I hate to admit it. And they got that kind of bad taste in their mouth from last time. I do think the Steelers are just going to cruise, but I think if you're playing cash games, it just makes sense to just put in both these guys.
Yeah, I like him quite a bit. And you look, we'll get to some value wide receivers, and there's plenty of value at tight end this week, even a value back you can use. So, realistically, paying up at both wide receiver spots, it may be somewhat contrarian this week because I think people will just kind of gravitate towards Bell.
Yeah. And I totally get that too, because Bell is obviously by far the highest priced guy, but he could easily outscore all these backs by twice the score. So it's I don't know. It's one of those weeks. Running back is way tougher than wide receiver because at least wide receiver, you got other options. You don't have to play Jordy Nelson. You don't have to play Antonio Brown. I definitely will be playing at least one of them. But there's options. But running back, if you don't play Bell and he goes off, that could be a rough night for you.
Yeah, definitely. And then we look at Nelson here and Brown. Two of the higher totals. We don't need to dive in as much because what needs to be said at this point?
If you don't know by now that Jordy Nelson and Antonio Brown are your top options, then this is a bad time to start playing NFL DFS.
OBJ, though, 8,900, and that's kind of your first swerve off of those two. Basically, yeah. He's the offense.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, I was looking at his stats and home away splits and everything and things like that. And, it's a Giants team that is their offense is not very good. Let's be honest about that. They do score more points at home, only 17 points a game away. Obviously, Lambeau Field, one of the toughest places to play. Probably, Green Bay or Seattle. Those are the two places you don't want to play in the playoffs. Obviously, Foxborough, but we don't. That's all. They always have a bye, so we don't worry about that in the first round. But it's a tough spot. But interestingly enough, you figure that his big games kind of coincide with their success, which there is some truth to that. But looking at the last 2 games where they lost and they were down, Philadelphia game, he saw 20 targets in that game. Had 11 for 150, didn't score a touchdown, but obviously, that's a monster game. Last game they lost before that, Pittsburgh saw 16 targets, 10 for 100. Again, didn't score a touchdown, but, this is a game where I do expect them to be behind. It's a fairly close spread. I think the Packers are kind of run away with this one, which is perfect for anyone that wants to target OBJ because, the defense has been playing well for the Giants, but, you got to take that with a grain of salt because you got to look and see who they've been playing recently, and they have not been playing the Aaron Rodgers of the world. They played the Cowboys a couple weeks ago. They played the Eagles, the Redskins, the Lions. The last time they played a decent offense was the Steelers, and then before that, Browns, Bears, Bengals, Eagles. The numbers are a little misleading, like how we were talking earlier this season about the Packers' run defense not being a top 2 run defense. Obviously, it wasn't. The Giants are a very good defense, don't get me wrong, but they haven't played an offense like this one, in months. It's been a long time. Even when they played the Steelers, they fared well, I guess. But either way, my point is to say I think they're going to be behind. I think they could be behind big, and I don't see any way Beckham doesn't see just a stupid amount of targets. He'll probably be targeted more than any receiver this weekend.
Yeah, I agree. I think in terms of targets, when we get to the end of the weekend, we'll be looking at OBJ up there as your top guy. And also, basically going up against secondary wide receiver, cornerbacks and safeties because of that banged up defense. So,
Yeah.
staying in that same game, Devontae Adams, a little bit cheaper than those three guys. Obviously, he's a guy multi-touchdown upside and kind of a good pivot away from Nelson if you're not really in belief that they might focus in on him a little bit more.
Yeah, and I mean that it seemed like that kind of was their strategy in the first game. Jordy Nelson, first time they played, had 13 targets, only caught 4 of them. Did have a touchdown. Devontae Adams in that game, he had 8 targets. He had 5 for 85 and a touchdown. So he actually easily outscored Jordy Nelson in that game. That's not to say that I'm fading Jordy Nelson. I still think he's a much safer option. But Devontae Adams does have 8 touchdowns this year. He's got 6 in his last 6 games. 2 touchdowns the last game. So, if you think that the Giants defense is one that we should be afraid of, do you think they could slow down Aaron Rodgers? It might be, a viable strategy in your GPPs to fade Nelson and play Adams instead. Obviously, 2 touchdowns last week will bump his ownership up a little bit. And with only 4 games, no one's going to be really low owned. No good players are going to be really low owned. But I do think there's some viability to playing him instead of Nelson in some GPPs because if I'm the Giants, you don't worry about the running game, of course. Aaron Ripkowski and Ty Montgomery, they're not going to do much anyway. So you try to stop one of these guys because you're not stopping Aaron Rodgers. It's just a matter of where the production is coming from. So I think there's definitely some viability to Adams over Nelson, but not in cash games.
Yeah, I mean, if you do want a low-owned wide receiver this week, you can just play Jeff Janis.
The truthers unite. No thanks. There will never be a time. There will never be a time when I play him. Is he going to be on the team next year?
I don't know.
He's going to get a Super Bowl ring. You like that prediction?
I would say that, yeah.
I think the Packers will win the Super Bowl.
It's about the team rolling in hot, and they're rolling in the hottest by far.
It's about the best quarterback in the NFL, and his name's not Tom Brady. It's Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, man. You're going to upset half of New England.
Just facts on this podcast. Just facts.
Value wideouts this week and staying in that same game that basically features 2 prominent passing attacks. Sterling Shepard, I mean, excellent price tag if you're looking to really get some salary relief.
Yeah, in games where we're targeting the Giants, and obviously there's only a few offenses even worth targeting this week, it's a spot where, their running game last week was okay, I guess. In a game that we weren't sure if we were going to even see the starters. I didn't think we would. And it seemed like kind of a vindictive thing. They just want to make sure that the Redskins didn't get in. But, either way, you'll probably have people look at this. Like people looked at the first game logs of the Giants-Packers game, and you'll see that Shepard had 2 catches for 14 yards. But, looking at him, he really doesn't have much upside as far as yardage goes. He only had one 100-yard game and really hasn't even come close other than that. 61 yards is the most he's had in the last 10 weeks, I think. But he's got 6 touchdowns in his last 9 games, 8 on the season. For $5,100, you're not stopping Odell Beckham. If you're an opposing defense, no offense to Jordy Nelson, he's got better hands. He's a more consistent receiver, but he's not the talent that Beckham is. It's possible you slow down Jordy Nelson. In this game, I don't think you necessarily have much of a chance of slowing down Beckham unless you're bringing in double teams. And, you got to get under his skin and make him beat himself, which is certainly possible. So there's no running game at all, is my point. And I think that Shepard and Beckham could both have pretty big games because if this game goes kind of how I think it will and the Packers score, maybe not at will, but I think they'll score 28, 31 points or so in this game, you're going to have to keep up, and they're not going to be able to keep up by giving the ball to Rashad Jennings.
Yeah, I mean, you look at these two, I can't tell you another player outside of maybe like a GPP dart and Victor Cruz. But outside of that, there's really no one that's targets are going to go to at this point.
Yeah, you're not going to play Will Tye. I mean, you're hoping for 1 catch for 6 yards and a touchdown with him, and there's other. I'll play Eric Ebron. I'll take my chance at a 0 with Ebron before I'll play him. But the accountant Larry Donnell, where he's hurt though anyway, so he's not even going to play.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of.
Not hurt. Sucks.
And there's no, I mean, really, we look at those running backs and, none of them have really worked well out of the passing game.
No. Yeah. And I mean, it seemed like last week, the only reason why we saw a heavy dose of the running attack from the Giants anyway is because they were just trying to kill the clock. They didn't care about that game. They weren't, it meant, and so it's, why put your wide receivers at risk? People looking at that game log and how much they ran, I think are making a big mistake because they're not going to be running much in this one.
Yeah, definitely. We get to the last one here, Jarvis Landry, 6,400. Basically, I mean, I think we can talk about the Miami wide receiver core just as a whole because, I mean, if you're anticipating the Steelers getting up big, which I think you and I both are, that's going to mean, Miami's going to be throwing quite a bit. And, I don't mind these guys at these price tags.
Yeah, I mean it's unfortunate that Tannehill is not going to play. They were speculating maybe he would play. That was stupid of them to even say that a couple days ago. Obviously he wasn't going to play, but Matt Moore is a guy that he's not a bad quarterback as far as backups go. He's not a guy that I would be searching out. I would want as my number one ever. But as far as backups go, he's got probably, I don't know the exact numbers, but I would imagine of all the backup quarterbacks of all these playoff teams, he easily has the most experience. So this is a guy that he's had good games at times before. Obviously, this is a Steelers defense that's playing much better. They're still not an elite defense. I don't think they're really even close to that. But, you look at what Matt Moore has done. He threw 4 touchdown passes against the Giants on 12, or the Jets on 12 completions. 2 touchdowns against Buffalo, 2 touchdowns against New England. New England, arguably the best defense in the league right now, or very close to it, if not. So this is a guy that's going to be able to have some success, and they're going to have to pass the ball. And, we'll talk about Jay Ajayi and the running game there, but, he's zero factor in the passing game. I mean, he does not exist in that passing game. They don't check down to him at all. He's not Le'Veon Bell. So, if they get behind in this one, which the world might come to an end if they don't, Stills, Parker, Landry, each of these guys could see 10-plus targets in this one if this game gets out of hand, And I think that Landry's your safest option. I think if you're going to go cash games, I think Landry is a guy. He should easily see 10 targets. Not much of a big play threat, but definitely a guy that has a decent floor here.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking for that big play, boom or bust, it's definitely Kenny Stills, just kind of with his vertical game. But yeah, I mean, Matt Moore, it hasn't been that bad. I think serviceable is probably the term to use because it's not like we're getting Connor Cook out there, and Brock Osweiler. And Matt Moore is certainly the better of the trio there. Yeah,
I wanted so bad to put Hopkins or Crabtree or Cooper in here, but I don't want to lose. So there's no way I can. Connor Cook. He sucks. He sucks so bad. And Osweiler's even worse. That game, I hope it's like 15-12, and it's just one long running play, field goal. One long running play, field goal. I hope that there's no touchdown.
I'm all in on Nick Novak this week, so fire away with that.
You play those field goal kickers, and you hope for good kick returns because those offenses are going to be so bad this week.
So, I for some reason, I can't stand Connor Cook because I go back to the Big Ten championship game when he was just in a douche way, grabbed the trophy out of his hands and just ripped it away. And I was just,
and that's why he's never had. You had to wait for 2 guys to basically not to be in such bad shape that they couldn't walk. Or Matt McGlynn, I don't think he can say his own name right now. He got wrecked. But you're the 3rd string quarterback, and he's going to get rocked. I can't wait. He's bad. Yeah. All right, before we go, who scores the least amount of points? What team?
I'm going to go with Oakland.
Okay, I'll go Houston.
It's one of those 2 teams.
first one to score 9 points wins. And I say 9 because no one's going to score touchdowns.
Just make it a playoff game or an overtime game.
If that game ends up being 38-31 now, I'll tell you what. It's a bad idea to play all those guys, but if you stack that game and it goes off, you're winning all the money.
Yeah, no, you definitely are.
So don't do it.
No, don't do it. So, if you want to check out Justin's article, you can head on over to DaveFantasyCafe.com, get a glimpse of his wide receivers. He's looking at it on both sites as well. And be sure to check out the rest of our wildcard content.